I think it's important to say up front, we were not successful in getting that particular funding pot, but in many ways we feel we were successful in achieving some of our core aims. So obviously there'll be other work happening in this particular space which isn't led by ourselves. But really what we wanted to provide today was an overview of that journey and some of our lessons learnt. And I think there's often this sense that we duplicate lots of different things. So hopefully this will help us avoid any duplication across research and development as well. So that's the tale we have to tell today. I was just explaining how we came to work together, just a little bit of background there. But I don't know if you want to say a little bit about that and our title, which is slightly different from where we began with, isn't it?
It is, yes. Well, we thought it was worth sharing with you today a bit of the process, even if the outcome wasn't quite what we'd expected. But we are carrying some things forward, and so today we're going to share a bit about the process we went through. It was actually, so kaizen, I'm going to explain kaizen later on, but we kind of realized afterwards that kaizen approach was what we'd taken. So it was a sort of a retrofitting, if you like. So we're going to take you through the approach that we took and what came out of it and what we've learned, really. Does that sound about right, Davina? Yeah?
Yes. Seamlessly dovetailed in there. So some of the things that we identified were the barriers, that we had some common barriers between our two institutions, and that really cemented our working together, that we saw that we had a similar structure, similar barriers from a PGR participation point of view, and actually within that similar challenges to actually improve that. One of the tools, if you like, that we use to help draw information and experience was Jamboard, and we've put the link in here for if you want to have a look at that at a later date. Obviously within the time we won't have much time to look at that today, but we used and explored and took the time to explore new tools in exploring those barriers. So what did we do? So we talked to each other, we had emails, we used Teams as another tool, a very collaborative tool. We did a survey and had focus groups led by others, not ourselves, which I think was critical to having increased engagement there. And we also focused on working closely with our key community, which were PGRs, other connecting directorates such as the Student Union, our networks and services there.
So this was something that we brainstormed sort of quite early in the process. We got this idea of progression through. Well, we looked at the whole. We wanted to look at the whole picture, right the way through from people considering undergraduate through to going on to do a postdoc and taking on careers in research. And so this was one of the early visualizations about the journey and where things go wrong, where the leaky pipeline is, where did people fall out. And so that metaphor was of a journey and the trains and getting off trains and being sent down the wrong track and having somebody to help you with your luggage, those kind of metaphors started to come through. So this is the introduction to the survey that we put out. And here's sort of a screenshot of the Teams area that we had. I think the thing that was kind of new for me, well, I think it was new for both institutions really, was that we absolutely tried to engage everybody we could possibly think of that might have any stakeholder or impact or possibility. So we talked to careers, we talked to the SU, we talked to PGRs themselves, we talked to academics, we talked to the staff networks, we tried to get everybody, we talked to the EDI networks, the EDI committees, everybody that we could possibly get involved, we did. So this graphic is it's a Wordle based on the free text responses from the survey that we did.
I think it was really interesting to put it through this this graphic and visualization, because it helped us identify some of the common areas, and as I say, we took this opportunity to really explore lots of different tools as part of our process, and really focus in on what was important to the communities we were trying to connect with, but for the purposes of progressing the bid. And we also used another tool, which this was a first for me to utilise, which was a Miro board, and this is sort of, if you think to our initial idea of tracks and visualization, this sort of moves that on a little bit by really bringing it down to deliverables and what are we going to do, who are the people involved, and how do they connect with each other.
And this is where you start to see that we got kind of 4 themes coming out of what we've been looking at. The tap on the shoulder, the sort of the critical incident point where somebody said, have you thought about a career in research? Why don't you think about doing a PhD? You know, somebody who actually believed or just kind of put that into somebody's mind. A second one was about being able to see people like me ahead on the track. In other words, role models, or, you know, visibility of the, we're focusing, I don't know if Davina mentioned, but we're focusing particularly on Bain, but being able to see that, yes, me in this, you know, a person like me can do this, and I can see that that's, you know, something that ahead on the track. Being supported to transition, which so we identified that there were transition points, whether it was undertaking an undergraduate degree or undergraduate to doing a research project in your final year, to maybe doing a master's, to doing research, to then thinking about whether you want to do a postdoc or move into academia. It was the transition points where support was particularly needed. And then the last one was really about having the resources to succeed, having the tickets, the things that make the journey possible. And a lot of the common themes there, you know, time you saw on the last graphic, but time, finance, support generally, if you're not from a traditional background, that, you know, there's a lot of assumptions in academia about, you know, because people have come from a family where there's people have had, you know, been involved in research careers, etc. And there's a lot of assumed knowledge. So kaizen, to talk about a little bit about this idea of kaizen, it's a Japanese term. It's being used a lot in business. There's kind of full-blown kaizen models. But how we reached this was we were thinking about all of the different things that we could possibly do, and different initiatives, and tackling these different points. And it reminded us of the Olympic success of the GB cycling team, who their coach, I think it's Brailsford, took an approach where they looked at everything. They looked at what pillows they used, what water bottles they used, the clothing they used, their daily routines, where people got up, when they slept. They looked at the size of the wheels. They looked at absolutely everything, whether technical, the athlete, whatever it was, and they made lots of very small incremental changes. And cumulatively, that's what led to the success of the GB cycling team at the Olympics. So, okay, that we thought, well, if we could do that, if we could do something, if that's an approach that might possibly work, and we actually found out that it's known as a kaizen. Kaizen being two Japanese characters. The first one meaning change, and the second one improvement. So it's about really not necessarily big, but many, a multiplicity of small incremental improvements to create an overall change. I'm going to let Davina talk about these, but these are some of the outputs and impacts that are actually going through the process of putting together this action plan, and the bid that we put in did in itself generate some really positive outcomes. So over to you, Davina.
Yes, and I think the development process, as I say, although the bid itself was unsuccessful, it has been successful in drawing on other things. So we now at Salford have an academic citizenship programme, which is really an inclusive approach to helping PGRs transition into academic career roles focused around teaching support. They also have the opportunity to benefit from associate fellowship if they feel ready to do that. So that was really an interesting approach from this. And then at Huddersfield, there's different communities and different levels of networks which have been established, and buy-in from a very senior level in both institutions, which we hadn't necessarily encountered in the same way before. I don't know, Anna, if you want to talk a little bit about some of the things from Huddersfield, and then we can talk about the projects.
Yeah, so I think first of all, we're now, I'm a researcher developer. I'm in the research and development area, but now I've got much better connections with the BAME network, with the what's on the EDI agenda, and I think the main thing really is we got some stats from one of the things I didn't mention. We got some stats from UKCGE as well, and I think there's a much more of an increased awareness between the graduate school, the research environment team who are sit within research and enterprise, and registry, and the directors of graduate education within each school, that this is an area we know. One of the biggest things is we realize where we don't have stats, where we don't have information, and we're going to start monitoring things. And as we are moving towards a new management system, building EDI into the data collection is another element that I think will definitely move forward. And that wouldn't have happened if we hadn't been really focusing on this. The other thing is we now have an interinstitutional network between the two institutions. These were some of the projects that we proposed. They're all of them had a sort of a work plan with them, of whether it was workshops or mentoring or whatever. But and we're happy to answer questions about what our plans were or are for these. We're going to take one of them forward, at least one of them forward anyway, even without funding, and we're going to then work on doing the others, perhaps at a much slower pace, as and when we can. But this idea at the bottom about embedding critical encounters is something I think now is part of how certainly we approach, or we're starting to approach, anything we do. How can we make sure that there is that opportunity for someone like me ahead on the journey to have a word or to say something or to be a role model in everything that we do?
And I think the idea of the critical encounters and the small wins or small gains is really important, and that's something that we're taking forward. And what we did do at the VTI conference, and some of you may have participated in that, is again create a Jamboard of ideas, and really to get a sense of where others were in the process, and whether there was any sharing of practice. We have a quick sort of snapshot of that Jamboard, but of course you've also got links there to see some of the other pieces of information that have been contributed. So I think the relationship building and the process building has been immensely positive, and we have, as I say, those two critical messages, which are small wins do make a big difference collectively, and this sense of creating or manufacturing, almost engineering those critical encounters. And of course, Anna and I continue to work together on not just this project, but other projects. And there's other members of the research and development community here today who are involved in some of those as well. So please do get in touch and connect with us.